Hey, finding great candidates to hire can be as hard as finding good football players for your football team. Football teams, though, they don't have ZipRecruiter. You do, and you can try it for free right now. ZipRecruiter's smart technology identifies top talent for your roles quickly. And when you go to ziprecruiter.com/audio, you can try it for free. Immediately after you post your job, ZipRecruiter's powerful matching technology starts showing you qualified people for that job. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. So start going out and finding your qualified candidates for free when you go to ziprecruiter.com/audio. That's ziprecruiter.com/audio. It's ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. Welcome to the Believe in Texans podcast presented by FanDuel. I'm here with former Houston Texans wide receiver Cecil Shorts. I'm Seth Payne, former Houston Texans defensive lineman. And Cecil, look, I know it's the preseason. I know we're not supposed to get hyped up about this thing. I want blood. I want blood, Cecil. I want blood for multiple reasons, okay?
Okay, I'm listening.
There's the whole Bryce Young versus CJ Stroud. I know these guys are buddies. I know they love each other. I know they have respect for each other. I cannot hate Bryce Young himself individually, but there's still a score to be settled in the long term in terms of CJ Stroud proving that he was the better choice in the draft 2 years ago than Bryce Young would have been. And then the other is this. It's that the Texans offense, if the starters go out there, I need them to shred apart the Carolina Panthers defense because the starters for the Panthers last week shut down Shedeur Sanders. Shedeur Sanders ended up doing some really good work against the Panthers' second-string guys, which is fine. I'm not here to hate on Shedeur. I'm actually kind of pulling for him now. I want to see this offense going against a lesser defense and put on display a little bit of what we're hoping we're going to see this year. It's all I ask is for a bludgeoning in the preseason in a meaningless game. Is that too much to ask?
No, it's not, and it should be expected. When you have the aspirations that the Houston Texans have, you want to go out there and compete, and you want to play well, and especially against a team that, in my opinion, the defense is not as good as the defense you see every single day, right? And I'm with you. I'll be honest, though, Sean. I'll be honest. I'm sorry, Seth. I called you Sean.
That's all right. People do it all the time because of Sean Pendergast and I.
I'll be honest with you, Seth. I had Bryce a little higher than CJ coming out.
That's all right, man. That's all right.
Now I feel bad. I'm like, but no, I'm rooting for Bryce, but I'm with you. I want CJ to outperform him every single time they match up because forever they're going to be matched up against each other. They're always going to be compared. It's like the 1 and 2 pick with RG3 and who's with RG3?
Oh, that was the Andrew Luck.
Yeah. Andrew Luck or Carson Wentz and Jared Goff. It's always going to be those two, right? So I think Bryce and CJ always have that comparison. So if he can outplay him even in preseason, it's always going to be a good look for CJ.
I think, I try to monitor what fans and sports media in an opposing team's what they're actually saying. Because I think you get a pretty good feel and barometer for things. Because I let my bias creep in when I'm watching Bryce Young. I think that even in Carolina, what I hear a lot of is, hey, look, Bryce did a good job when he came back in after being benched last year, but the aspirations for him are kind of almost like, yeah, I think he could be a pretty good game manager. And there's a lot to like about him. Obviously, he's got a really high football IQ. He can throw with accuracy. But my biggest question about him always was, all right, for a really, really small stature guy, what does he do to make up for it? With Kyler Murray, he's a small guy, but he's got incredible athleticism. Yeah. Bryce, that's where I don't know if all of his skills combined are enough to overcome the fact that he's one of the smallest starting quarterbacks I've ever seen that wasn't Doug Flutie. And, Doug Flutie it took a while for him to kind of become a productive NFL quarterback, but certainly not a guy that you would have thought should have ever been drafted number 1 overall in the draft like Bryce Young was.
No, it's crazy because I think you're right about that. To me, he's to gain some more weight, right? But you don't want to slow down or mess up your arm strength or whatever the case may be, right? But he is tiny. But what does he make up for that? When you look at other undersized guys, you made a great point. They had other abilities, other attributes that stood out crazily. That's like, all right, I can't pass this guy up. What got me with him was his leadership. Mm-hmm. He was able to lead that Alabama team, a Nick Saban-led team. He was able to be everything he was in the tough SEC week in and week out, fight through injuries, the whole 9. So I think that's what he wanted me over. But his stature is interesting, man. And can he hold up, right? Can he hold up is going to be a huge thing when guys your size, when you were playing, guys like this huge pouncing on you, not even being like extreme, like extra rough. It's just a normal fall. Can you handle that at that particular size consistently, right?
Yeah.
And then I think that they're trying to do a good job of surrounding him with weapons because I think about a Drew Brees, get the ball out extremely quick, extremely accurate. He wasn't getting hit, but when he did get hit, Drew Brees had a lot of injuries in his career. Like he battled a lot of stuff consistently.
Yeah, that's the Tet McMillan is the guy they drafted in the first round, and Xavier Legette obviously is intriguing, but a guy that has untapped potential, I guess you could call it. Hunter Renfrow is a guy that's going to get a lot of time in this game most likely, unless there's an injury that I missed. But he's intriguing just because Hunter Renfrow has been high and low and had his breakout game in the NFL against Houston in Houston. He wasn't really doing much, and then all of a sudden he just kind of let it fly, and he had that big reception where it was like a 5-yard reception that turned into a long touchdown reception. So there's intriguing names on the Carolina Panthers offense. I think their defense, they were one of the worst scoring defenses in the history of the NFL last year. I think they might have been the worst, but they were really, really bad. They went out and they got 5 free agents on the starting defense, and should be just theoretically improved. At least on paper, they look like they're going to be improved. And they also run a 3-4, so that's as there's a lot that goes into, man, when you see a 4-3 day in and day out, and the starters haven't played in a game yet. There's some differences for the offensive line, and then for CJ when he's involved in the run game more this year. I want to see how they respond to that challenge. They'll have a little bit of a taste of it tomorrow. I'll be at a practice tomorrow, so I'm excited about watching some of those battles in practice. But that's the next big test for this offensive line is, hey, do the starters all play this week, and do they look as good as they did versus a lot of backups last week?
Man, consistency. Can you do it again? Great teams can do it over and over and over again. Really good, right? I want to see J.C. Horn. I want to see him line up against Nico, against Jaden Higgins. That, to me, when you go against other good corners and you make plays, okay, now you're good. Because eventually in practice, you'll know Kamari Lassiter, how he plays versus this, how he plays versus that. You'll know Derek Stingley, as good as he is, how he plays versus certain stuff. You don't really know when you're practicing against a new opponent or play against a new team, all their intricacies and stuff. So for me as a receiver, I want to see Jaden Higgins and these younger guys even Nico, go up against the J.C. Horn, go up against some of those veteran DBs they have and continue to make plays and continue to shine. So I think that's going to be huge. Also, I want to see this tight end room. Mm-hmm. Like, we had a terrible injury to Brevin Jordan. I can't stand that. I don't know all the details of it. Maybe you do. But who else is going to step up? Because he was playing a lot in week 1.
Yeah, they've got Luke Lachey, the draft pick, and then Irv Smith, who's been injured during camp. I don't know if he's going to play or not. Irv Smith did some good things as a blocker in the Kansas City game and towards the end of last year. So there are options. Brevin Jordan's always been that guy that, man, when he flashes huge. Yeah. And he's had some game-breaking plays at points, but he's never really developed into a consistent producer for the Texans, and there have been obviously a lot of obstacles. So the hard one for Brevin Jordan for me is that he was such a great story during camp, Cecil. Like, he had worked his butt off to come back from his ACL, and every time he spoke to the media, it was all about just how happy he was to be out there and just how happy he was to be able to practice today and be at training camp and step on the field. So that part of it, emotionally and just pulling for the kid that maybe this could have been his breakout year, that part of it was really tough. When I was thinking about C.J. Stroud, because, C.J. Stroud was, upset as everybody else was when Brevin Jordan got hurt. And that turned into a whole sports radio thing for about 36 hours about whether was C.J. showing too much emotion. Our guys on our station had varying opinions about that. It's time for the season to begin. I was thinking about you because you've spent time in Bill O'Brien's offense, and there's elements of what Bill O'Brien did, what the New England Patriots did with Tom Brady that Nick Caley is bringing here. The quarterback having command at the line of scrimmage, the use of the slot receiver, I think, is going to become much more heavily emphasized. But a lot of it, for me, that's always been fascinating is teams that really lean into choice routes or option routes by wide receivers and how much complexity it brings to the game. Like, what was it like for you as a receiver learning that system, and then also you're so good at this. Just give a brief, tutorial about what choice routes are and what option routes are.
Well, I tell you what, in O'Brien's system, it was like learning a new language. It was very complex. It took a lot of intentional time to understand what he was looking for as a slot receiver, right? Because when you line up, and like you said, it's different in the 4-3 than the 3-4, right? In the 3-4, that outside linebacker who's a edge rusher, if you're in a slot, he may creep out a little bit depending on what they're doing on defense, or get over you, maybe bump you, right? So there's so many little intricacies, and you have to understand the defense. So we may come to the line of scrimmage, and one thing I did love about O'Brien's playbook, a lot of the time we would come to the line of scrimmage with two plays. So you have options of a run or a pass based on what the defense was doing. But as a receiver, if we check to that pass route, then I got to look at my triangle. I got to look at the guy over me, which could be a nickel or a backer, the near safety, and the corner on my side, and figure out what they're doing. If they're in zone, on a choice route or an option route, I kind of skip off the ball, observe what's going on, and if it's zone, I'll turn around and sit now at 5 yards, right? Find the open space in the zone. If it was man, I'm running out of it. It could be inside, it could be outside, based on the leverage of the inside player, which is a nickel or a linebacker, and the outside player. So if I ran a 5 yard out, I skipped off the line, and I peeking at the corner. If the corner's dropping back, and I see this nickel or linebacker's man coverage, boom, I'm going to an out route, right? Mm-hmm. But you got to be careful, because sometimes that corner, he'll play off and then come back up. So now it's a trap too.
Yeah.
So he'll play off, and he's got some flat responsibility. And now I'm running out. I'm like, no. So you have to really take your time and understand what's going on. I think what helped for a slot receiver like Christian Kirk, like Noel, what they'll be doing, possibly even a Woody Marks, what they may be doing, is really a lot of film study preparing. Because once you have an idea of what that defense wants to do, hey, it's 3rd and 8, they're going to be in cover 2. Okay, great. I'm going to kind of slide to the right, make sure I'm peeking, seeing what's going on. I'm watching that middle linebacker. Is he a little more deeper? If he's deeper, I have an idea it's probably going to be cover 2. I know I'm going to snap it off at 5, right? Mm-hmm. So it's so many things you have to see at the line of scrimmage and understand and be on the same page with your quarterback.
Yeah.
It's a lot that goes into it, but it works if you do it well.
That's where I was always fascinated by that, because I've been, as a defensive player and just talking to offensive players, the one that always sticks out in my mind was one year with Mark Brunell. They were running, a lot of the same things. And then I saw at times in Houston, I think we might have run into this. When you try to coach a system like that, sometimes it gets coached in such a way that, well, yeah, in hindsight, well, obviously you should have known that the slot was going to run it this way, and you should have thrown it to him or anticipated that it gets really complex really quickly. If you got 3 wide receivers, each of those guys could be doing 3 different things. That's all of a sudden 3 times 3 times. That's 27 different potential things that could happen, right? And it starts to be something out of A Beautiful Mind, where you got to see all these different diagrams rolling around. Is it like, was O'Brien good at kind of teaching it systematically to where it made sense at least, and guys could get a feel for, or a quarterback could get a feel for knowing where everybody was going to be?
Yeah, he made it as simple as he could. Mm-hmm. And based on the coverage, and I'll be honest with you, he did a good job letting the quarterback coach it, because the quarterback has to play it. And there's certain things that he wants in a cover 2 and a cover 3, and man, there's certain things he's looking for. There's certain throws a different quarterback likes to throw, right? And certain angles they want to come from. So I think all of that is, he did a good job of putting it on the quarterback to help be the coach of that, because ultimately they're the one throwing the ball. Mm-hmm. So if me and the quarterback are on the same page, if CJ and Christian, if CJ and Woody, if CJ and Noel are on the same page in the slot, it's like lightning, because it can happen fast. Now, another thing about that offense too is the hot routes. So based on the blitzes, there could be a guy over you, it could be an inside backer blitz, and it could be anything. Based on blitzes, the quarterback will point to you like, hey, these two. Takes one of these two, pointing to 2 guys. If one of those guys blitz, you're hot. So I got to not only look at the defense as a slot receiver, I got to look at the quarterback to make sure we're on the same page. I'm seeing what he's seeing. Because there's moments where the receiver will see something like, hey, look, he's about to blitz. And then he'll point like, okay, you got it. and there's times where he'll see it and I won't. So you got to be on the same exact page. There's so many things that go into it, but I'm telling you, it's golden. And you've seen it run so well, not with necessarily me and Brian Hoyer and those guys, but with Tom Brady in that system, oh my gosh, when run is one rail, it's run really good.
Well, that's where I've always wondered about that with hot routes, because some offenses have more of a hot route element than others, and I always just wondered why don't you have hot routes? Because it's a get out of jail free card, or it's a chance for big explosive plays if you utilize them. Why do some offensive coordinators not lean into it as much?
I think it's a few things. I think one, they don't know how to. It's not in their offensive scheme, right? They're trying to make it easy for the quarterback, because that's a lot of responsibility for the quarterback and the receiver. I think two, they don't trust either the receiver or the quarterback to make the right decision. They don't have the right personnel. But it's literally, like you said, it's a cheat code. If you can catch them blitzing, it can be a run play. It can be anything. You can catch them blitzing. If he's able to call out of it and you hit on a 5-yard hitch or a 5-yard out or whatever the case may be, in some offenses, it's just you turn around quickly. You catch it, and this guy's not near you for another 8 yards.
Yeah.
So you make one guy miss, depending on who the guy is, it can go 60. It can go 20. It can go a first down. So it's definitely a cheat code when ran right. I could
write a whole article on cheat codes that I don't understand why teams don't use them. And I understand on the offensive side of things, I get it. You add a lot of complexity to it. It's easy and it works but the more complexity you add, the harder it gets. But even for quarterbacks, this is what frustrates me when you have a team where the offensive line has false start issues, is that the hard count and the dummy count is it's lethal, man. As a defensive player, especially as a defensive lineman, when you're in your stance, you're getting tired. When you're up there at the line of scrimmage for 20 seconds and you're in your stance and it's like the 12th play of a drive, the lactic acid is pulling up in your legs and you're getting stiff. You can feel it. But then the worst is when you've got a blitz called and the quarterback, Peyton Manning or somebody runs a good hard count, and all of a sudden he stops, stands up, and readjusts. You know that the safety who was blitzing just showed what he was going to do, and it's annoying as hell. But it's so effective. And then just the other is pump fakes. How much a pump fake affects the secondary, and some quarterbacks just don't. They don't do some of these simple things. On the defensive side of the ball, it used to frustrate me that if you stemming your alignment as a defensive player, it screws up offensive linemen so much. Because they're thinking, they're making their calls and everything based on a certain front. And if you can get 2 or 3 defensive linemen to stem in unison and change the front right before the snap, it just destroys things. But again, you run into a defensive lineman, get tired, and usually it would end up being like me or another veteran defensive lineman. You're like, guys, come on. It's just free plays out here.
What do you mean by stem? Is before the snap?
Yeah,
like stem as a receiver is after the snap. You'll stem inside, then get vertical. So
I should have explained that. Yeah. So if I'm lined up in a 3 technique, and then right before the cadence, or right in the middle of right when the quarterback's saying blue 42, I stem down to a 1 technique. So I go from outside shade of the guard down to the center. And the best is if the center is on a silent count, if the offense is using a silent count, you do it while the center's head is down. And they'll be yelling. I've had guards. Jeff Saturday and I used to have a lot of fun with this, because Jeff Saturday would have his head down, be like, "Where is he? Where is he?" And it's so easy.
That's smart. It's so easy and it's simple.
Yeah,
but like you said, people overlook it.
So with CJ and trying to adapt to a difficult system like this, CJ himself has said it. I've been preaching to my listeners all off season long. Hey, it's a lot. And it's not always a smooth and simple transition, so you should expect hiccups along the way. But what are the biggest hiccups we should be looking out for?
Hot routes is going to be one. Slide protections is going to be one. Like, he's going to have to learn probably through mistakes. Like, probably when it comes to line of scrimmage, if he gets blown up one play, it's because he didn't make the right check or didn't read the defense correctly, right? I mentioned hot routes. I even think when you come to the line of scrimmage, and I talked about it, you'll be given 2 plays. And based on the coverage, based on the front, based on what they give you, you got to choose the right play. So that may be a hiccup. That may be some difficulty just understanding what's going on. And I think just doing that in the heat of the moment is different than doing that in practice. It's different doing it in a controlled environment. when you got to do it in front of 80,000 on a Thursday night when everything's crazy, right? So it's going to be some hiccups. It's going to be some adjustments that have to be made. But I think we got to be patient through the process. And if we don't see improvement, if we see the same hiccups over and over and over again, we're like, all right, they got to make it a little more simpler. But CJ should be able to handle things in a way that I think you'll see a few hiccups, but it'll be able to move on quickly.
Fact check me on this and tell me whether I'm being too nice or not. This is one of the excuses I've been making for CJ with some of his interceptions. He's thrown a lot more interceptions in camp this year than we're accustomed to seeing. On the one level, I think part of it is, hey, I like it when quarterbacks test their limits and figure out what you can and can't get away with when you're in a new offense. I'd much rather have a quarterback throw interceptions in training camp than not throw any at all. Marcus Mariota, when he was a rookie, didn't throw any interceptions and people were gushing over him. And ultimately, he was just too conservative of a quarterback. The other part that I wonder is, when they were in West Virginia last week, in the scrimmage situation on Thursday, the offense looked a lot better. And I think I was talking to John Harris about this. I think that the offense was a little bit more of in a game plan mode and trying to attack the defense where they thought there were opportunities, as opposed to installing things. So as I'm thinking about some of the practices and the way we've watched them operate, I wonder how much of some of those interceptions have been, hey, CJ's working on going through the progressions and he's trying to make the right decision and get rid of the ball, whether or not it was exactly the right, like whether or not he should have thrown the ball because Kamari Lassiter is in good coverage or not. It's more of just going through the muscle memory of just, hey, going through one of D'Amico, when I talked to him last week, it said, one day CJ's area of emphasis might be just on going through the progression, that it's all right to throw a pick in practice. What you're really concerned about is, hey, he made the right read and threw that pass with the right timing.
No, you're absolutely right. Especially in a new offense, your daily focus is different on a day-to-day basis because you're trying to understand what the coach wants in this read or in that read or against this front or against this defense. So he may take chances. He may just say, hey, I'm going to shoot it if this guy does this, and then we'll just take a chance to see what happens, right? But also you saw the difference. I think that's huge. When they game planned and they were trying to execute certain things versus a certain defense, the offense looks 100 times better.
Yeah.
But when they were emphasizing certain things, it's going to be rough points. Like, you're going to make mistakes. You're looking to honestly make mistakes to see what you can and can't do. Then what you can do, you'll take it, apply it, and then put it in your back pocket and use it later. What's
your biggest concern about the team right now?
My biggest concern, I think, offensively, overall is offensively. I think defense is flying high. I'm very curious about Christian Harris.
Yeah.
That's not a concern, but I'm keeping my eye on it. To me, it's running back. You got to be able to run the football. And Joe Mixon being injured makes me nervous because even when he comes back, how healthy is he going to be with no training camp, no preseason, no nothing? He's a professional. I get it. He's a dog. All that good stuff. But there is a transition period back. So can Damian, can Nick, can Woody, can Dare, whoever else, can Jordan, whoever else, can they step up and be productive in the run game? How consistent can the offensive line be with the duo scheme, with whatever the mid zone, whatever they want to run? Can that be consistent and good enough? Because in my opinion, you still don't want that pressure on CJ to feel like he got to do it all.
Yeah.
You want to be able to run the ball at any given moment and take the pressure off of him. Now the play action works. Now the rollout works. Now the boot works. Now all this stuff can really pan out and work together.
That's where I am too. Joe Mixon was my biggest area of concern, and part of that is it's coupled with some excitement just because in the game the other night, I'm watching Ogunbowale with those runs, and I'm thinking, man, that good job by Ogunbowale, but some of those runs by Joe Mixon could have been super explosive runs, just with a little bit quicker on the read and then a little bit quicker with the burst and everything. That's not a news alert that Mixon's a better running back than Ogunbowale. I would add to that, I really liked the push they got on the line of scrimmage. I think blocking the second level on the run plays, that's where I need to see some progress there. There's too many times where the offensive line did a really good job blocking the defensive lineman, but whoever was working up couldn't quite get a good clean block on a backer or a safety. You know, Jakob Johnson, I think, had some really good things in the game, but there are also a couple times where he needs to be a little bit better, which it's one preseason game. I'm excited about the potential for it. It's what they need to clean up right now.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
D'Amico said something last week that kind of surprised me in a good way, and I had asked him about the effect of NIL. And actually, I had just made the comment that, man, it really does seem like a lot of these rookies, at least on the Texans, are more professional than rookies and young players were back when I played. And that was 20 years ago when supposedly, we were the greatest generation. Like these guys actually seem more professional. D'Amico said he thinks part of it is NIL, that guys already have experience, A, collecting a paycheck, and B, kind of treating it like a business to the point when they get in the NFL, the money part of it and everything that comes with it isn't as much of a shock as it used to be, which I thought was something that might happen, but I kind of speculated it. But it's kind of nice to see, at least as much as people might hate NIL or worry about its effect, I think you are getting a more polished version of rookies at times.
I think at times on certain teams you are. I'll be honest with you. I think Nick Caserio and D'Amico have been doing a heck of a job finding the right guys for the organization.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Finding the right guys that fit. Yes, I do think that's a part of it. The NIL, giving guys experience on how to handle money or how to handle fame. And today's social media is so crazy. It's like you're famous in high school. Like you can be famous in middle school, right? So like when you get to the biggest stage, it's not that bigger. It's bigger bright lights, but you've been there before almost. Yeah. I just think that stands out to me is Nick and D'Amico and that scouting department. They do a good job finding what fits who they want and sticking within who they want and what type of player and what can fit the culture.
FanDuel has the Texans as a 3-point favorite in this preseason game versus the Panthers, basically saying, hey, these two teams in the preseason at least are about equal, but the Texans have the home field advantage. I'm optimistic that C.J. Stroud and the starters, if they do play in this game, are going to have some success versus this Panthers defense. Panthers defense bolstered their starting lineup in free agency. They've got 5 new starters that they got in free agency. They were a horrendous defense last year. They looked good so far versus Shedeur Sanders last week. The starters for the Panthers did a good job versus Shedeur Sanders. It was the backups that got eviscerated by Shedeur Sanders, and that's where I think the Texans can end up doing a lot of damage versus those Panthers backups. So I'm going to take the Texans at -3, according to FanDuel. I love talking to Cecil, not just because of his knowledge about the Texans, but because he gives me an education in wide receiver play every single time. Love it, love it. If you missed our breakdown of the perceived overthrow of Davis Mills to Cade Stover last week, Cecil did a great breakdown on it on the YouTube channel. You can go, or on the podcast, go check that out. And thanks to FanDuel for sponsoring Believe in Texans.